I don't have a design degree, didn't go to a boot camp, didn't spend a dollar, didn't leverage my network. I basically did this the hard way, but I found a job as a full-time product designer despite not having a traditional design background. Hey, my name is Gian. I'm a digital product designer living here in the Silicon Valley. I'm going to tell you about the specific things I did to land my very first design job, and I'm going to explain my thought process along the way. When I was going through my own career transition struggles, I looked to stories of people successfully transitioning into tech from unrelated backgrounds as a source of inspiration, but also information. It was really insightful to know how people got into tech and the moves they made to make that transition successfully. After watching a lot of videos and hearing enough stories, I found that it was a viable path for me, or at least something that I should try, and it worked out. There are many paths into product design. I know a lot of people from various backgrounds working the same type of job I am. It's good to know and be aware of the various paths to get into design so you can explore your options as you're considering a career transition. Tech is great for a number of reasons. I think digital product design is super interesting if you're curious about people and the way things work. So it's a good place to be in, and I think as it continues to grow in popularity, the value of these types of stories will go up as well. Okay, so now I'll tell you the specific things I did and my rationale for making those decisions. I'll make this quick, but I do have some plans for future videos detailing what a product designer does and more advice for career transitioners. So if that interests you, feel free to subscribe and like, you know what to do. So I'm gonna give the very short version first in case you just want to know exactly what I did and you don't need all the details. I'll be going into more depth later on. Here's the summary. So what's my background? My academic background is in health sciences. I have a bachelor's in kinesiology, and my original career path or plan was to become a physical therapist. What's my design background before getting my first job? I didn't have a design background. I liked to draw. I like to make digital art here and there, but aside from that, no design background whatsoever. What was my professional background? I didn't have a professional background either, never had a job, did some volunteer work as part of some stuff for college, but aside from that, no professional experience. So how did I go from wanting to become a physical therapist to wanting to do something else completely unrelated? Well, I didn't have the passion for what I was trying to do anymore. I got into college wanting to become a physical therapist. As college continued, I realized that I didn't see myself doing this as a career. So I took that as a good indication that I needed to do some reflection and exploration to figure out what it is I really wanted. As I was thinking about it, I had a curiosity about things outside of my field, specifically in tech. I had tried coding before, and I thought I'd look into it and see what I could do. I found the website freecodecamp.org because I was interested in building websites, and then I started using it. Once I was intent on transitioning away from this physical therapist path, I did a mix of the following things. I earned FreeCodeCamp's front-end development certification. I created projects along the way and learned through YouTube and Googling answers when I got stuck on code. I made a portfolio website and added links to live versions of my projects that I had designed and developed myself. And I put those projects on my resume as my experience. Alongside code, I was learning design. I learned about web design and just design in general by reading a lot of different design content, consuming design content on YouTube, like watching videos, and just reading articles written by designers just to build a base knowledge for design. And related to that, I watched the videos on YouTube of people who had successfully transitioned into digital product design from unrelated backgrounds so that I could just understand how to think about this whole process. So once I had created a few solid projects, had them on my portfolio website, and filled out my resume with those projects that I had built, I started applying for jobs and preparing for the job search. So I started by just learning basic interview techniques because I had never done an interview, learning about interviews specifically at tech companies so I could be ready for that. And I just started sending applications to whoever had an opening related to what I wanted to do, which was either front-end development, web design, or UX or product design. Sent out around 90 applications cold to a bunch of different companies. Eventually got 2 calls back. One translated to an on-site interview, and that was the one interview that turned into my first job offer. So once I got that job offer, which I was super stoked about, I accepted it and then started working a month later. So that's a summary. That's exactly what I did. If that's all you needed, thanks for stopping by. Okay, now that those people are gone, I'll give you the more detailed, in-depth version so that you have a better picture of what I did and how I did it. And I'll give a more detailed timeline as well as a deeper look into my background and the whole process of what I did to eventually get that first job. My academic background is in the area of health sciences, so I have a bachelor's in kinesiology, which basically means I took a bunch of hard science classes like physiology, chemistry, biology, physics, things like that, and a lot of exercise-related classes as well. This is a pretty typical major for someone that's going to become or wants to become a physical therapist, an athletic trainer, or a personal trainer. So a lot of people who are into exercise would take this major. It was pretty cool. I'd recommend going to college if you're able to, hopefully for a major that you actually like. But as I was finishing up my degree, I realized, man, I don't actually want to become a physical therapist. I can't see myself going to grad school and then going down this as far as a long-term career. And I took that hesitance as I need to do some reflection and exploration. I knew that I could just suck it up and deal with it, but I would go to grad school hating myself for doing that. So although I wasn't stoked to throw away almost 4 years of work in college to do something completely different, I knew that I had to do it because I wasn't happy on the path that I was on. I was finishing up college thinking about what to do next. I knew I was going to deviate from my current path, and I still wanted to do something that I cared about and resonated with me personally. So I just looked inward, I did a lot of reflection and thought about what else I might be interested in. So I wasn't concerned about finding a job super quick, and I wasn't concerned about money because my parents were supporting me and I was privileged enough to not need to worry about it. So I had a lot of time to think. And I started thinking about myself as a person and what it is I cared about. And one place I looked was what were the interests that persisted with me throughout my whole life up to that point. So what has always been on my mind or something I've been involved in and spent my time with despite everything else that's been going on in my life. So two things came to mind when I reflected. One was I've always been interested in technology. I grew up on the computer playing games, looking at really early internet memes. And two was art or design in some form or another. So I really liked doing art projects in school. I liked drawing, and I did design some t-shirts and like forum signatures here and there. It wasn't something I practiced. It wasn't something I really was trying to get good at. It was just something I did for fun. And it's funny because I didn't really consider these two areas to be something I could find a job in or build a career off of. I was really focused on doing something very stable, and so I didn't really consider these other two areas as far as a career goes, which is kind of funny and kind of sad. Like, these were things that were right in front of me that I have now verified that I do actually care about, and I never gave it a second thought that I should try it out or anything like that. It just kind of was never there because I didn't see myself in tech, and I really was fixated on that idea of finding a very stable job. After some quick research, I found that quite a few people had made the transition into tech via front-end web development, and it wasn't too uncommon for someone with an unrelated background to make their way into tech by learning on their own. So this really gave me some evidence that I could do something like this. On top of that, it seemed like a good place to be because it also had flexibility. So coding is a very valuable skill to have. Design and art is pretty universally applied to many experiences, so I thought, hey, I could learn the basics doing this, I could find a job, and then I could branch out from there. So if I decided to change my mind again, there are all these different areas I could go into. So maybe if I really like code, I could become a software engineer and become more specialized in a different area. If I really like the design and art aspect, there's graphic design, set design, movies, stuff like that, that could be in the future as well. So I thought this would be a good path to start in, and then there's flexibility to go elsewhere if I change my mind yet again. So rather than committing to a coding bootcamp or going to school again and like getting a CS degree or something like that, I decided to just start on my laptop. Luckily, it's just one of those things where you can try it out for free. You don't really need to get set up or do anything crazy. You just start writing code and then you see how you like it. And that's what I did. And as I was getting started, I started thinking ahead, like, how do I translate this into getting a job offer somewhere? Because I'm in the Bay Area, which is highly competitive in tech. How can I perhaps give myself an advantage when it came time to look for a job? And I considered that I would be competing with fresh computer science graduates who are looking for entry-level jobs as well. Because my goal was a job, I wasn't learning this for fun, I thought about what a potential employer would be looking for in a potential employee. And it became more clear what I should spend my time on. It would be things like being able to speak intelligibly about things regarding the job and the companies that I'd be applying for. I need a portfolio that shows that I can actually do the work, so I need concrete projects that reflect my skills, and I also need the basics like a resume to show that I have experience that's relevant to the jobs that I'm applying for. So just thinking about it from that perspective gave me a good idea of what's important. So I started with YouTube, I looked up how to build a website and started watching, and I realized pretty quickly I wasn't actually learning anything. I was being exposed to concepts, but I wasn't applying them in a meaningful way, and therefore I wasn't actually learning. And so I looked elsewhere because I knew watching YouTube videos wasn't going to get me where I needed to be. And that led me to freecodecamp.org, which, like it says, it's free, and it's an online curriculum for learning web development, which is exactly what I was trying to do. So it was perfect. I got to try it out, and there really wasn't any harm in it because I wasn't committing any money to it. So I really like Free Code Camp because each large section was punctuated with some projects where you could apply what you just learned to a project and then have something for your portfolio. And it also was satisfying because you would have something you built, and it was really cool. And of course, this seemed like a great way to learn because I was applying the concepts, I was designing the projects as well, and then also writing the code that powered it. So I started on Free Code Camp the summer before my final semester in college, and I would estimate I spent about 2 to 3 hours a day just working through the content. When school started, I continued but at a slower pace, and then when school ended and I graduated, I started spending more and more time on Free Code Camp. So here's what the spreadsheet looked like. I wanted to see on average how much focus time I could spend on this before losing concentration, essentially. So I tracked the time that I was focused on my work. So because I knew myself and I had a ton of free time, I knew I might get like toxically productive and just try to spend all my waking time on this goal of finding a job. So the spreadsheet that I created was to help stop me from doing that. I could look back on the spreadsheet and say, okay, I know I spent 5 hours on it yesterday. I'm working at a good pace. I don't need to burn myself out. This didn't really work for me because I was really insecure about my skills. I was concerned I wasn't going to be able to find a job, and so I overcompensated by working really hard. And I suffer from this problem, or at least I did, this problem of having done a lot of work throughout the day, and then at the end of the day, not feeling like I accomplished anything. I was using the Pomodoro method, which I wouldn't recommend now, but I would work in 25-minute chunks and then take a 5-minute break. So 25 minutes, 5-minute break. Aside from Free Code Camp, I spent a portion of my time researching the field and just exploring other options for the goal of finding a first job. And one thing I considered was enrolling in an online computer science program at Oregon State University. So that seemed like a cool option, but I threw it away pretty quickly. So as I was going through all this, I was doing a lot of reflection. I was thinking, am I having fun? Is this interesting? And then really trying to envision myself doing this every day for a job. I supplemented what I was learning in Free Code Camp, which was web design and web development, by consuming other design and development related content. So I would read articles from designers and programmers and just get an understanding of the ideas that were out there, and that helped give me context for what it was I was doing. Luckily for me, one of Free Code Camp's first projects is a portfolio website. So I built out a portfolio website, put my projects on there, and that was what I used when I started applying. So one of the projects for Free Code Camp was actually a portfolio website. So I put together a portfolio website, put the other projects that I was working on that website, and then that was also on my resume as a project and also as a link so that people could see my projects in a live format. And as I was working on all this, I kept an eye on job openings. I started just looking up where my skills aligned with different jobs, and things came up like front-end developer, UX designer, web designer, things like that. And that gave me an idea of other avenues that I could go down in terms of a job or a career. So I looked closely at job descriptions just to get an idea of how far away I was from actually applying for a job and having it be considered. So I thought, hey, I need a baseline level of skill for someone to even consider me as an employee. And I tried to gauge that from just looking at the job descriptions. In hindsight, it isn't really a good way to assess your own skills by comparing it to a job description, but I could see a general idea of what an employer would be looking for when filling a position like a front-end developer or a UX designer. For my portfolio and resume, I just looked up videos and did research there and looked for what does a good portfolio look like, what does a good resume look like, and then I tried to apply those to my own resume and portfolio. So on job websites like Indeed, I searched for positions that had HTML, CSS, and JavaScript common front-end skills as requirements. And web design and product design came up as other options. So in these design positions, front-end skills were listed as nice-to-haves. After doing some research and thinking about it, product design aligned a lot more with what I cared about and where I was naturally spending my time. So I was working on these projects for Free Code Camp. I was designing and developing them myself, but I didn't really care about writing code. I didn't find it as fun as I did designing it, making the projects look pretty and easy to use. So I found that product design just naturally aligned more with my interests, and proof of that was it was where I was spending my time with my projects. Once I stumbled upon product design, that became my new goal. But I accepted that I probably would need to work some sort of related job before I got the job that I really wanted, which was a product designer job. So I prepared for applications by preparing my resume and portfolio, getting it reviewed by friends. I put my best projects on my portfolio and my resume. I had 4 really solid projects I had designed and developed. I put extra care into the visuals because the projects themselves were fairly simple, so I wanted to make a good impression. And I wrote and hosted my portfolio on GitHub Pages, which was also free. Initially on my website, I marketed myself as a front-end developer, but eventually I changed that to a product designer who knew how to write code. And this just seemed like a nice way to reframe it because design roles typically had front-end skills as a nice to have, and this kind of presented me in the best way possible. It was like, oh look, he knows how to write code, and he's a designer. That's pretty cool. From here, I just sent my resume to whatever companies had the skills that I had listed in their job description. It didn't really matter if it was design or front-end development or anything like that. I just sent it out because I figured, hey, I can't be picky. I know I want to be a designer, but I will have to suck it up for a while, probably. I ignored the really intimidating job descriptions that said, hey, you need 10 years of experience, you need this long list of skills, because I knew those were exaggerations or inaccurate at best. So if it had my skills, I applied to it, and I just hope for the best. So for specifics on my application process, I would pull up a fun YouTube video here, and then have my applications here on the job board, and I would just type in all my information or copy and paste it in. And I sent out around 90 applications total. I got a call back after 40 for an unpaid design internship, and I asked them, hey, why is this an unpaid position? I'm just curious. And they said, well, the company's not doing really well, to be honest. And I was like, to be honest, I don't want to work here. And I didn't want to work there anyways, but it was just really cool to get that first interview and just a first call back to say, hey, your work was worth it. You got a call back. And I felt pretty good about it, even though it was a dud. But I continued with the application process, sent out 50 more applications. And along the way, I was brushing up my portfolio, practicing for interviews, making sure my resume was up to date and squared away, just to make sure that if I got a call back, I'd be prepared. After around 50 more applications, I got a call back from a real company, a small fintech startup, and I verified that they actually pay their employees. Leading up to the first call, I prepared furiously because I was like, hey, I don't want to blow this chance at working at a real company, and it actually seemed pretty cool. So I researched the company, I looked up all their employees on LinkedIn, just trying to build my understanding of what the company does and who works there, and I eventually got to the first call, which was a surprise coding test. So I was under the impression that first calls are usually pretty chill. You just talk about the position, you ask a few questions, but I got hit with a surprise coding test, which sucked because I was super nervous. But made it through the coding test, had a couple more phone screens before being invited on site. So I made it to the on-site in San Francisco. I was super excited. I couldn't sleep the night before because I was so nervous, and I had a bunch of coffee the morning of because I couldn't sleep and I was really exhausted. Was falling asleep on the way there. Got to the office, had an on-site, which was talking to like 8 people back to back for several hours, talked about my projects, they asked a ton of questions, they asked about my skills, and I did well enough for them to give me an offer. I happened to be exactly what they were looking for, which was someone who had strong design skills, but also knew how to write code. That just happened to be what they were looking for at the time. This tends to be the case for earlier stage startups where they might want more generalists, so keep that in mind. So for the exact timeline, I started on this path, or started thinking about this stuff around May 2016, and then spent some time to finish college, which I finished in like January 2017. And then from January 2017 to May 2017, I was working on this full-time basically, and then eventually got an offer after 3 months of applications, which was really nice, and then started my job a month after the offer. So yeah, that's the whole timeline. That's everything that happened. So from nothing to a job in around a year and 4 months, and I finished college along the way, which was cool. I do want to acknowledge the amount of luck that goes into something like this. I think with most things, luck is a huge factor. From me not needing to work at the same time, I didn't have any other obligations. My parents were supporting me financially, and I happened to apply at the right time for the right company, for the right job, right? There are all these things that come into play, and it's important to think about that when you're going through this career transition process, because as much as it sucks, not everything is within your control. You can't force these things. You can only focus on certain things like developing your skills and connecting with people. So if you're on a similar path and you're getting rejected and feeling down, just remember not all of this is a reflection of you, because it's not all in your control. You can't really control these random things that will affect how things are going to turn out. So keep that in mind. Looking back, this was a period of growth for me. I think it's due in part to the reflections that I did. I thought a lot about who I was as a person, what I cared about, and where I wanted to be, and that eventually led me to where I'm at right now. And it was definitely challenging because it didn't feel good to throw away like 3.5 years of school just to go do something completely unrelated. It felt like I had wasted that time, but looking back, it was worth it because I got to find something that I actually liked in a way. You have to try things out and see what you don't like to find what you actually like. And I think I was lacking that life experience to make a mature decision about the path that I wanted to be on. It was exciting too because being new at something, there wasn't any pressure to do anything right. It was just a fun way to make mistakes and learn along the way, which was fun in its own way. And I think the biggest thing that fueled me was this feeling of regret. Like, I didn't want to regret not trying something new or exploring a new path if it was something I was curious in. Because I knew the feeling of regret would outweigh my momentary doubts of like, man, are you wasting your time with this? Like, do you really think you can get a job doing this? You're competing with all these people that have studied it for years. And I think that feeling of like not wanting to regret missing out on something really helped me along the way. And after thinking about it some more, I could always get back on that physical therapy path if I wanted to. And this was just like something to try along the way. And when I thought about it from that perspective, it became a lot less scary and intimidating to take this on. I will be doing more videos sharing some of my tips that I've learned along the way. I've been in the field for more than 4 years now, so I've learned a lot. I'm still learning right now, and I think I have a lot to share for anyone else that wants to be a self-taught product designer. So if that interests you, feel free to subscribe, like, leave a comment on what you want to learn or what you want to see from me, and then I'll reply and make a video to address your comment. Thank you for watching. I truly appreciate it. See ya.